Today, we will have our presenters, Linda Taylor from CASAS, Jesse Despain, Laurel DeRoe, and Glenda Rose from Community Action, and Karen Cook with Austin Community College, our own Texas folks who have been doing the pilot testing for CASAS on remote. So we're very excited about that. I just want to, before I turn this over to the CASAS team, we have several people from the CASAS team here. Linda Taylor, Jesse Despain, and Laurel DeRoe. They'll be speaking with you this afternoon. And we have our Texas team, Dr. Glenda Rose from Community Action and Karen Cook with Austin Community College. They did pilot remote testing for CASAS, so they have a lot of things to share. And we're just excited that Texas got to be part of the pilot, and they were able to do that because we have our own local expertise now as well. And before I turn this over to Linda, and Linda, you can get up your slideshow if you'd like. I'd like to ask Anson, he's joining us today, if he'd like to welcome everyone and say a brief word.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I appreciate all the heavy lifting you're doing to help us out with this. And welcome to the Texas team. Glenda and Karen, great to have you guys on. And we know what expertise you have that's going to really carry us forward. And the CASAS team, we can't wait to hear from you. It's been busy time. You guys are all doing fantastic out there. We just reported that through the whole lockdown period, starting in March, we maintained 71% of our students through April and May. That's just phenomenal. And that's because you guys just did some miracles in pivoting the system to remote. The remote testing piece is huge for us. And we've gotten so much great feedback so far from folks that are using the BEST and the TABE and now CASAS and getting that up and running. I personally believe we're going to be in a remote phase for over a year or more. You know, it just doesn't look like science is on our side in terms of opening up our schools and stuff. So having a deep bench and a lot of expertise on this remote testing is important. We have a remote testing guidance letter coming out next week that'll only complement what you're going to hear today from CASAS. It's not going to say anything different, but only complement it. Some more guidance to go on. Our doors always open, our ears are always ready to listen to needs that you have. And with that, I just want to say I'm really proud of everybody, happy to be part of this system, and can't wait to hear what CASAS has to say today. Welcome, CASAS, and let's hear from you.
All right. Thank you, Anson. This is Linda Taylor. So glad to be here with you all today. I am the Director of Assessment Development at CASAS, and we've been up to our eyeballs in remote testing and trying to make it possible for you to do it in as efficient and easy a way as possible. So here's the agenda. And we're going to first talk a little bit generally about one-to-one remote testing, which is the focus of this first webinar. We have another webinar right after this one. There's a half-hour break, and then there's a second one where we're going to be focusing on testing multiple test takers, but this first webinar is focusing on the one-to-one model where there's one proctor and one test taker. So I'm going to give you an update on what is new, even since you all completed your certification. I want to congratulate all of you for doing that. I'm quite amazed and thrilled that you all were able to get through that, pass it, and be able to be here today on the call. And hope you don't mind that that was a prerequisite. But we thought it would be a more fruitful session if you already had the basics under your belts. So I'm going to give you an update on what's new even since Monday. Then we're going to talk in a little more detail about delivering remote testing, because the material that you covered in your certification is generally about CASAS remote testing, but it did not go into detail about the different approaches that we have. So that's what today we're going to tell you a little bit more in detail. Glenda's going to walk you through this quick reference guide, the steps. And we have a video that we just released on Monday that actually depicts a proctor and student going through it. And then we're going to show you this new feature we have as of this week to register test stations, that is your device or your computer, remotely. Then we're going to invite again Karen and Glenda to talk about some local program considerations, and then you'll have a chance to ask questions. So that's how we're going to proceed. First of all, just in general about one-to-one remote testing, but let me first refresh your memories about this chart that summarizes our 4 approaches. And some of them are one-to-one. The first and the fourth are exclusively one-to-one, one proctor, one student. The second and third are with multiple test takers, or could be one-to-one. And they differentiate in terms of course, the one-to-one or multiple, on whose device is the e-test program registered. Sometimes it's the proctor, sometimes it's the test taker. It's always on the proctor's computer or device when it's one-to-one. The proctor devices that are possible in each approach, and when it's in this first approach, it has to be a Windows 10 PC, and the last approach also. Then the test taker devices, and this is where, especially in this one-to-one first approach and fourth, there's more possibility for a variety of test taker devices you can see. And especially on the fourth one is where Chromebooks are possible. They're also in number 3, but for in one-to-one, students can use a Chromebook. We know many of them have them. Then in terms of the web platform, any remote, in terms of the first one, it has to be a remote control and screen sharing. So Zoom has remote control, some other platforms do, but that's a feature that's necessary for this approach. The approach 4 doesn't require remote control, so if that's a limitation, you can use that fourth approach for one-to-one. And then having a smartphone in addition to the Zoom platform, that's where you would have a device on the side, a smartphone where the proctor would be able to see more of what's going on than just your headshot, the headshot of the student. So that's something that's recommended, but it is not required at all. It only is required on approach number 3. So that's an overview of these different approaches. And then now I'm going to ask first Glenda and then Karen to just say a few words about the one-to-one approach.
Okay, so we were actually piloting CASAS this year at Community Action at a couple of locations and ended up extending that pilot because of problems that came up with other tests. And for the remote testing, of course, we have some limitations in that a lot of our students don't have computers at home. So that's one difficulty, but we are small enough that we can just focus on the one-to-one. And we're working out the details about what to do about those students who don't have devices. We're actually looking at a loaner program at this point. So that's about us.
Hi, and this is Karen with Austin Community College, and we are a larger program, but we find the need that right now we're focusing on one-to-many, but as we got into piloting, we realized that some of our students won't have the technology. We too have Chromebooks that we might be loaning, and there's that opportunity to do one-to-one as well. So in our program, we're kind of going to do a hybrid approach, a lot of one-to-many, but we do know there'll be a need for that one-to-one approach, and been field testing a lot, about to progress testing starting next week, and really excited about the results. And CASA has been really helpful in listening to our recommendations, and things have really, I really like a lot of the new things that they've come up with. Thank you.
All right, well, that's a great segue into what's new. So in just a second, we're going to move over to the CASAS website and look at that remote testing page, which I know you looked at in your certification course, but I'm going to show you, as I said, a few more things, including a new feature that we have a document that we are going to keep updating every time we update something. And it's moving so fast and things are changing so much that it's actually stabilizing now. I think we finally reached a point where we have the documents and the procedures in a place that's working. And we got, as Karen said, and Glenda, both of them provided great input, as did others of our pilots from around the country. On the CASAS website, we have our own proctor remote testing training and certificate, but it's necessary for you all to do the Texas version, not the CASAS version. This is the remote testing page. Actually, first of all, I think you all know how to get there, but just to be sure, here's the home page. And there's a video that you're going to see in just a minute. Maybe some of you have already seen it, I don't know. But on the right, there's this very large heading that says remote testing. When you click on that, you get to the page that's our one-stop shop for all of the resources and information about CASAS remote testing. Now here's this new document that I just mentioned. It's in red, bold, first, okay? So I would recommend that you periodically come visit the page and open this up And you will see that just on Tuesday, we updated the remote testing guidelines for all of the approaches actually, and what we call the quick reference guides for all of the approaches. We also have new features which we're going to tell you about more today, registering remote testing stations. There's another way to register a station through test taker credentials. And also we have something new in the guidelines, which is a kind of a nice template for reaching out to students before they test. So that was actually came from one of our users in Nebraska who had done a nice model email to her students. And so we asked if we could borrow that and put it in our guidelines. So we're very happy and excited whenever we get great ideas from the field. And as you can see, we definitely incorporate them. So and this update, so this was the June 2nd one. On last Friday, we updated some things. So this is a rolling document, and so the next time we update, you'll see a new date here and new things. So that's to keep you aware of what's happening. The demonstration is a video that we're going to watch in just a minute. The next bullet is this testing certification, which you all should ignore because it's not for Texas, it's for other states. Then we are doing webinars. In fact, we have a national webinar next Thursday, June 11th, where we'll be covering some of the same things we're covering here today, but there may be some other things. So if you're not hearing about those through our global emails, please go on the CASAS website and sign up to get them, or you can go to our What's New section to find out when they're going to be. We're doing more or less once a month, the big national webinar. We have about 1,500 people on those calls. Then in this first big box here, this is the sort of general documents. We're going to cover in detail this new one about registering test stations as a PDF in a minute. The summary chart is what I just showed you. The Going Remote checklist is how to get started in your program. It lists out the steps and it has links to useful guides for how to get going with remote testing. Then we've just updated recently the FAQs. We're in version 2.0. We added about 20 more questions. So that's a document that you can check as well if you can before you call tech support. But of course, you can always call our tech support. They're very patient and ready to work with you. Then the next boxes cover each of those approaches, and they all have the guidelines, which are the detailed step-by-step guides to how to do each of these approaches, and the quick reference guide for each approach. So this one is the one-to-one remote control. Then we have the multiple test takers with Windows PCs, then the multiple with Chromebooks, iPads, and then oral responses. So also, at the very bottom here, I know you know about this from the course, but we have these forms that we require one per agency. And sorry, it's a bit small, but the agency remote testing agreement we call the ARTA is we need one of those per agency because we have some additional things in addition to what you've already agreed to for just doing e-tests on site. We have some additional things we want you to be aware of and agree to when you're doing remote testing with CASAS. Then there's also this third bullet here is for proctors, and we ask each proctor to fill one of those out before they begin proctoring, and that's something you should have on file in your program. So that is a summary of the, so as I mentioned, there are two approaches that only allow one-to-one, the remote control and the oral responses. And now I'm going to hand it over to Glenda, who is going to walk you through one of those approaches.
I want to show you the quick reference guides. And there's a really important thing about the quick reference guide that you need to know. It has everything that you're going to do. When we first did the pilots, we had to go through the full long document, and we were so grateful that they came out with these shorter documents. But you still need to have that longer document available. And let's see why. So we go through the quick reference. This is the remote control. I have mine in sheet protectors on my desk. And this just helps you make sure that you're following the procedures correctly. You can't just use this. You need to be very familiar with the CASAS remote testing guidelines. I'm sure Linda will tell you that too. You really need to know what it says in the big document before you can use this quick reference. So it has all the things you need to do for setting up, but then when you get down here, you'll see things like this. Step 2, greeting and explanation of next steps. So this is after you've got it set up. You get them the link, and then you secure the meeting. So you lock the room so people can't come in, and you make sure that the student can't change their names like we ask you to change your name. But then on step 3, it says introduce yourself, explain remote testing, check device readiness ID and testing environment, answer questions, and check understanding guidelines pages 4 and 5. There's a script that's actually in the guidelines, and that's very helpful. I wouldn't recommend trying to just ad lib it. I think it's helpful to actually have consistency in the testing to make sure that we're saying pretty much exactly the same thing to every student. So on the remote control, so you come here and then you go to page 5, and down here at the bottom it starts talking about, it'll give you things to say. This is during the test. So you want to make sure that you have that available because it's going to tell you what to say. Now, after you've done 100 of them, you might have that memorized, but I do not. So I still need to have both documents available to me, and I've got little stickies on the main document so I can find things quickly. That's just a tip. So let's go back and look at the quick reference again. You do have to verify the ID, the test taker's identification, so you need them to take out their ID. That's really important when you're explaining in the guidelines how any personal information is going to be used. Actually, I do that with communication before we set up the test. Make sure they know that I'm going to need their ID, otherwise they show up and they don't have an ID and you have a whole other issue, right? And then making sure that they know that you're going to protect their information. I think that's very important. You also ask them to state their name. And then this speed test, I cannot tell you how important the speed test is, especially since I'm in a rural area. So if you don't know, bandwidth in a rural area is not very good. And so if you run a speed test and they do not meet the minimum speeds, you can't do the test, because what's going to happen, you're going to start, the internet's going to drop, and you're going to have to start over. So that's an important step. And also, you should have already done your speed test before you get in the room. You should already know what your internet speed is to make sure. With everybody on the internet right now, there are times of the day where it dips, and you just want to make sure that you can do the test safely without having a lot of bumps or getting kicked off. You also need them to pick up their device or webcam, show them the whole room. So you need to see everything, and you need to make sure nobody else is in it, because sometimes there'll be kids and I'll have to reschedule, because you don't want any distractions, and it's important. And then it has the trial run. You're going to actually go through, well, this is to set up, but for the real test, you're going to make sure that there's no books and there's no things that could, like whole posters on the wall of things for them to remember. I haven't had that happen. I just could imagine myself doing it. And then the trial run. So this is really important too, especially everybody's nervous. I've actually found that it's good just to have a conversation with them for a little bit, like how's it going, to get them to relax. And test taking is already nerve-wracking, and then we're doing a completely new procedure, and it can be very distracting and difficult. So you want to make sure that you've practiced sharing screens, because they're going to need to share their screen with you so that you can check they don't have anything else open, and then they're going to have practice using the remote mouse and keyboard, because it's pretty good, but sometimes it's a little off and it takes a little practice. You can use the e-test samplers to do those. Now, at this point, you have, according to the quick reference guide here, the two options. You can get a short break and then actually start the test, or you can confirm what day and time you're going to have the test, and they'll come back later. And then it goes into part B, so actually taking the test. And again, you keep seeing these guidelines. Some of the script is here, so the agreements. This is really important, because this is making sure that they're at least giving us verbal consent that they are not going to cheat, that there's nothing else going on that would compromise the test security either. Like, you cannot take a picture, copy, or share any test prompts, questions, or answers. And then this one's fun. Please turn off your cell phone. So remember that they can only do this test on certain devices, none of which are a phone. The screen size is too small for the phone. So you want to make sure that the phone is off. Otherwise, they could be using it for looking up things, or just get distracted because somebody calls or texts, whatever. This is where you ask them to share the screen. There's your script again. And once they've done that, they can stop sharing, and then you start sharing. Then you have the script again in the guidelines, explain the test, and you get started. So important during the test, it can be a little boring. You're sitting there watching them take a test, but it's just like doing a proctor with a real face-to-face group. You don't get to leave the room. You have to sit there and watch and make sure that they're not violating any test rules. So that's extremely important. If you can't take a break and come back later and see if they're done. And then of course make sure that everything looks okay before you let them go, because sometimes there may be a glitch and it doesn't record, and you certainly don't want that to happen. And then you just go back to normal. So these quick reference guides are really helpful, but I think my biggest concern is you cannot do this by itself. You have to use it in conjunction with the guidelines. Okay? Yeah, thanks, Linda. Yeah, when I said you can't use a phone, I meant for the actual taking of the test. The font is too small. The questions just don't read very well on those smaller screens. So they need, I think it's 9 inches, Linda, is that right? At least a 9-inch screen?
Yes.
Something that they can actually see on. So the other thing to do is, as Linda was saying on this CASAS website, is to come back before you start. If it's been a couple of days, or 3 or 4 days, come back here and make sure that you have the right version, the most current version of the documents, because little things may have changed, which will be up here, but you want to make sure before you get started that you know what's changed and how that's going to affect your testing. I think that's all I need to say about that.
Yeah, just there's one more question from Johnny Hill. So Johnny, what it is if they can use the phone, but only when it's the device that's being used to communicate with the proctor and for the proctor to see the student. And it's only in approaches 2 and 3, because, like, for example, the Chromebook, you can't have Zoom running on the Chromebook at the same time as eTest is running. So you need the phone as the way that the proctor and the student communicate. So that's when you do not ask the student to turn the phone off. They need their phone for that approach. But for the approaches we're focusing on now, the number 1 with the remote control 1-to-1 and the oral responses 1-to-1, they must turn off their phone.
I guess, Linda, it might be a good idea. I haven't done the Chromebooks yet. I'm getting Chromebooks soon for the loaner program. But it might be a good idea then to make sure that the phone is on Do Not Disturb, because otherwise somebody could call in.
Nice. Yeah, good point.
So I love this. I'm just going to say I just could hug Linda for this. One of the most helpful things is actually to see what this looks like before you do it. So if you haven't done it, this is a great video. You might want to watch a couple of times. So if you've already watched it, watch again. You're going to see something else that you didn't see the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. It takes about 7 minutes. So hang in there.
Is an easy and flexible method for delivering remote assessments to your adult education students. In this video, we show a proctor preparing a student to take a CASAS reading assessment, following the 1-to-1 remote control guidelines, and then administering that test. Prior to this, the school has sent the student an email with instructions for connecting with their proctor using a web conferencing platform at a specific time. It describes the computer hardware that is supported and a reminder about showing their identification. This helps the process go more smoothly. In this example, the student and proctor are both using Zoom.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll be proctoring your reading test today. First, let's make sure that your computer or tablet is ready. This should take about 5 minutes. Do you understand?
Yes.
After we finish that step, I'll start your assessment. I'll be online with you through the entire process and answer any questions you have. The test will be running on my computer, but you'll see the questions on your computer and type the answers. I'll be here to help, so don't worry. Do you understand?
Yes.
First, I need to check your ID. Can you please show it to me and say your name?
My name is Ricardo Jimenez.
Thanks, Ricardo. Next, let's check your internet connection. Please open a web browser. Got it? Okay, please type in this link, www.speedtest.net. And click go. Is it running? Tell me the numbers when it's done, please.
52 download, 11.5 upload.
Great, that will be fine. Now please close that browser. And next I'll need you to close any other applications that are open on your computer. But please be sure to leave Zoom running. Let me know when you're done.
Got it.
Let's do a quick screen share so I can confirm everything is closed and ready to test. I'll stop sharing my screen and you click on the green Zoom Share Screen button and select all. Okay, that's fine. You can stop sharing. Click the red Zoom Stop Sharing button. Last step before we get started. I need you to show me that your desktop has no papers and that there's no one else in the room with you while you take your test, okay? Please pick up your computer or your webcam
and show me the whole room that you're in. Yeah, move it around so I can see all of it.
Great, thank you.
Let's try to use the remote control functions next.
First, I'm going to share my screen with you. Can you see the eTest's login screen? Now you're going to make a temporary change in Zoom so you can use my computer. In the Zoom toolbar, do you see View Options? It might be up at the top.
Yes, I can see it.
Please click View Options and select Request Remote Control and confirm it. Try moving your mouse and clicking. This is how you'll answer questions on your test.
Yes, that works.
Would you like to practice answering a couple test questions using your mouse?
If the student says yes, the proctor loads the eTest sampler. The student clicks through several questions to practice. If the student says no, then you may continue to the assessment.
Okay, now your computer is ready. Before we start, I need to review the 5 rules with you. You need to answer yes or no to each question. Do you understand?
Yes, understand it.
First, you'll need to keep your webcam on during the test. I'll be watching while you take the test, and if you have a question for me, you can just wave your hand. But just know that the video will not be recorded. Do you understand?
Yes.
And then number 2, is anyone else in the room with you? For test security, you must be the only person in the room when you're testing.
Okay, yeah, nobody else is here.
Number 3, will you take the test by yourself? No helpers.
Yes.
Okay. Number 4, you cannot use notes, books, or your computer to find the answers. Do you agree?
Yes.
And finally, number 5, you cannot take a picture, copy, or share any test prompts, questions, or answers. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, we're done with the rules. Please turn off your cell phone. Can you show it to me so I can see that it's off? Great, thank you. All right, let's get started with the test. The purpose of taking the test is to find out what you need to learn. It's important that you do your best on the test. You should be able to finish the test in about 1 hour. And if you do not know the answer, please do not guess. Instead, just continue to the next question without answering it. If you finish early, you may review your answers before ending the test. Do you have any questions?
Nope.
Is this your name?
Yes, that's me.
Great. You can go ahead and start the test.
While the student is testing, the proctor is watching the student's movements and the room around them. The student should stay seated and no one should enter the room. The proctor can see the student's progress answering the questions via the CASAS eTest session manager console.
Okay, I'm done.
Yes, I can see you're done with the test from my computer here as well. Great. So go ahead and click the log out button. Do you have any questions before we end our session today?
Nope, I'm just glad I'm done.
Great job. I'll send your results to your teacher and I'll go ahead and end the Zoom session now. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
As you can see, CASAS remote testing is an easy and flexible method for delivering remote assessments to your adult ed students. On our website, you'll find detailed documentation and other training resources. Please be sure to refer to them often. The guidelines documents are especially important. They contain proctor scripts as well as the technical and environmental requirements for remote testing. Many different devices have been approved for proctors and students. This chart shows the current list. If you have any additional questions, please email us or call. We are here to assist you. Thank you for choosing CASAS for your remote assessment needs.
Okay, great. When I was watching that, I had something click into my mind. When you're setting this up ahead of time with the student, make sure they know you're going to ask them to show the whole room, because some students have gotten embarrassed that they didn't know, and they have laundry or stuff around their testing area. So you want to make sure that they know ahead of time that you're going to be looking at the room.
We did have a question for Glenda and Linda. Someone's asking, what if someone cannot pick up their computer to show you the room? So they have a desktop.
If they have a desktop, they probably have a webcam on it rather than a built-in camera. So they should be able to pick up the webcam.
Pick up the webcam, okay.
The other thing I would do, I haven't had that happen, but the other thing I would do at that point is ask them to join the Zoom on their phone and use their phone to show me what was going on around the room.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So now I will ask Jessie Despain from CASAS to take you through some of this little more technical part about remote testing stations.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting us here. I'm going to take you through this new registration process. You're probably all very familiar with registering stations in the previous manner, kind of the traditional way, I'll call it, where you log in as a proctor and you type in your credentials, and then you have a second person come type in their credentials, and now your station is registered. You've given it a name in the system, and you're able to send a test to station 1 or station 10. For remote testing, that obviously wasn't practical. So we have streamlined that quite a bit. And we have this numerical code. It's a 6-digit code, and I really like it. It's very convenient, and it helps the whole process quite a bit. It's similar to what you receive maybe when you're banking and you get a code through text message to kind of confirm that you are who you say you are. It's the same kind of idea. So it's really simplifying the process. I'm just going to go through it here. Okay, so one of the documents that is on our web, this is one of the documents on the page that Linda was sharing earlier, the remote testing page on the CASAS.org website, how to register testing stations remotely. So I'm going to go through these steps. It's fairly simple. At the beginning here, we have different scenarios depending on what device you're using. So I would actually just like to ask real quick, I think you guys are all using Windows, or do you know if you have Chromebook and iPad? So what I'm going to show is the Windows 10 device, because that's what I have, but it works the same on iPad or Chromebook. You have different apps. So for the iPad, we have one in the Apple App Store. For the Chromebook, we have one in the Google App Store, or Web Store as they call it, and you'd have to have that installed in advance. For Windows, you just go to the website, you click this button right here, take a test, and then it downloads a very small exe file that you run. Okay, so you do have some of that. So then what I would say is, part of what you're going to do as a proctor when you first meet with the student is make sure that app is installed. You may even want to send an email in advance saying, please go to this URL and install the app. Depending on how tech savvy the student is, they may be ahead of you with that, or they may not know what you're talking about. But yes, for an iPad, you need the iPad app. For the Chromebook, you need the Chromebook app. And so again, we'll just proceed with Windows 10 here. So the first thing that we do is go to eTests Online. So this is the same page where you always go to log in yourself as a proctor. We're going to start a session. So let me sign in here. I have my own special Jessie demo agency here. That's what I'm logging into. So this will take me to my testing sessions. Today I'm going to use Site 2. And let's say I'm going to do an ABE student. So I've filtered for that. And this is an intake pretest session. This is kind of the standard one you would use for a pretest. So I'm going to start that session. Not sure if you all have seen this yet, but this has changed with remote testing. Even if you're doing an on-site test, you now have 2 different buttons. So if you're at the location and you're proctoring physically in front of the students, then you would use this button. If you're doing a remote test, then you click this one, Start Remote Session. And even if you're doing one of these kind of newer hybrid scenarios, which we've heard a little bit about, perhaps you have 5 people in one room and 5 people in another room and 6 people in another room right there on site. You still need to use this start remote session. So if you're not in the room with those people, with those students, it's a remote session. So I'm going to click on this. Here's the important point. Here's my code. So 657875. That's something I need to make note of. This is the key for everyone I'm testing to get registered and added in here automatically. That's really the nice thing, is that the stations get added in here automatically. You don't have to do much. Okay, so let's go back to the document quickly. So I've logged in. Okay, and then I just explained that. Okay, so we want to make note of this code. You can write it down. You could also copy it. I think it's helpful depending on which platform you're using, which I think it's Zoom. You can copy this guy, and then you can go to the chat function and send that guy out. So now everyone in the session knows what that number is. They can easily refer to that. So that's kind of a little tip for you. Should help the process. So we've copied the code. This is just a reminder. This is what it looks like when you log in on the when you go into the station, what the student sees. There is an option to register station with credentials. We view that as kind of an emergency backup. If something goes wrong or you can't get the code working, you can still log in as a proctor and register the station. But in general, this is already selected. You want to use this one, register station with code. And as I said, there's some advantages to that. Okay, so I'm going to go there. Open another tab here, since I'm working on only one computer. Your students, if they're on Windows, they're going to go to this web page, which is the same place you go to sign in, but they're going to click take a test. If you're on the iPad, it automatically kind of takes you into this when you launch the app. And when you go into kiosk mode on the Chromebook, that's exactly where it takes you to, is this take a test page. So I'll click on this. On Windows, we have to download the secure browser. It downloads automatically, and then you just run this file. I'm sure as proctors, you're all very familiar with that. Okay, so this is going to open up, and you should be seeing this full screen. And what happens is, even though I clicked on take a test, my station is not registered. So it redirects me automatically here, and I have the option to register with a code or with credentials. So register station with code. What I need to do here is paste in that code. But one thing is, I just did Control V, and the secure browser kind of prevents that from happening. There are some workarounds, but
Here, Jesse, I can read it to you. Ready?
Oh, excellent.
657875.
Thank you. And that reminds me that probably the easiest thing is for the proctor to say 657875, everyone. It's going to be easy to just read that out. Everyone gets it together while they're in the main room, and then they'll click register. So all of the stations should have this message now. Your station's been registered, click OK. So then we tell them to click OK. They're gonna get this message. It actually, oh yes, that's right. It's gonna ask for the ID. I want to switch back over to what the proctor is seeing. So this is what the student sees, right? We just finished registering, but I'm gonna Alt-Tab back over to the eTest website, and this is where you are as a proctor, and look at that, it just added it in there. It has this random name, RTS for remote testing station, and the lab that it's in is remote stations. If I go over here to testing stations, you're gonna see it right there. So that's its lab, that's its random name, that just got created when I used the code. Okay, so there's my station. It added in automatically, so you didn't have to go here and do add stations. But an additional step here is enable tests. So you have to do this as a proctor once you know that all of your students are in, their stations have been registered and they appear here. You get a count here of how many. So let's say you're doing the max, which is 5. You should have 5 stations listed here if everything's going smoothly, and it'll say 5 stations listed. Once that's happened, you can do enable tests on all stations, and that's just going to click enable this button for all 5. Or you can do it individually. I actually kind of prefer the individual because then I can look and say, oh, I know who that person is. I know who that person is. You'll notice that we only have this, random gobbledygook here. It doesn't do any identifying of who the person is. Well, I'm going to switch back now to the students view. And once that's completed, you will see the student's name here. And you don't have to enable tests until you see their name. You can do it now.
Hey, Jesse, can I jump in real quick?
Oh, sure.
This group is mostly one-on-one. And when I was doing it, when this first popped up, it confused me because my station was already registered, but they want us still to do remote, right? They still want us to click remote, is what Linda said.
Yes. Just to touch real quickly, the remote, when you start remote session, that marks the test, the ultimate test that this person takes as having been a remote test. So you always want to use that and not the on-site session unless you're physically in front of the student. So good point. You'll only have one station in that case. You'll only be registered. You already have this running.
We're using Zoom. And like I said, we are focusing on one-to-many. But this could also be used a little bit for a one-to-one scenario if you wanted to as well. We have, like you do here, a waiting room, and we are sending students one-on-one into what we call the main room with a moderator. And there the moderator is going to check that they're on their schedule to test. We'll probably check their audio and video, go over a few things before we send them to a breakout rooms. If you're familiar with Zoom, you can have breakout rooms, and in those breakout rooms, we'll have proctors. You could also do this if you want to do a one-to-one. You could almost say, I'm going to test from 8 to 12 on a certain day, and then just have it open, and the students will come in, the moderator checks them, and then sends them to a proctor to test as well. There's a lot of different options you can use with this format. The things I wanted to say is when you send a link to students, you might want to have a letter there to kind of give the tech requirements. I know what Glenda was saying about how they have to show the room. I want my students to be as prepared as possible, that they have their ID ready, because then they could go search for their ID. So things like that on when you send their link to this testing event. I don't want to go too much into one-to-many because that's our next one. So for the remote takeover function of that, I wanted just to point out when we were doing that, you need to know how you're going to handle tech issues, because sometimes there's a lot of security. A side note to that, the first people we progress tested was our IT class, and they talked about security. And let me tell you, that was a good instructor because it was very secure. So we had to work through that, and everyone got to test, but just have a plan for how you're going to handle any tech issues that come up. I know I'm going through this quickly, but the other thing, and Glenda mentioned this, is the guidelines. And one thing that we're working on, especially because we are focusing a lot on one-to-many, is what is the role of the moderator? What is the role of the proctor? We're going to have scripts, the scripts that we can use for them exactly, because like Linda said, it's hard at the beginning, and it's easier to train when we're training our proctors on our process, that everyone knows what their function is. They know how to move in Zoom. They know how to send students to the breakout rooms. What do they do when they're finished testing? All of these things we are writing down in processes for our SOP internally and for TWC. Oh, and the other thing I'd like to say is when we're doing this, we're realizing we're going to start slowly, because once you put links out to students to come test, it's not like you can have that flexibility that you are face-to-face if something doesn't go right. So we're the first week of our testing, we are going to start slowly, make sure a lot of practicing with our testers. And we are doing a lot of progress testing in the next couple of weeks. And so fine-tuning our processes. And I know you probably have a lot of questions. If you're thinking about doing one-to-many, it's important to really study your platform that you're using, because not all breakout rooms will have audio or video. And then you might have to do with the cell phone as your video. It depends. I couldn't get WebEx in the breakout rooms to have video, but that could have just been the account that ACC set up. So just make sure that you do a lot of practicing and testing those out. Trying to think if there's anything else, but this has worked well for us. But like I said, we probably will be doing one-on-one, because some people don't have the technology, that we might have to do a remote takeover and have them use our computer like one-on-one allows for. Or if we're doing Chromebook, which today was the first person that was asking, are we going to loan out our Chromebooks? And I'm sure that's probably going to happen to students that don't have the technology. And yes, there's only 5 people allowed per proctor. One thing that we do, and we even do this when we're testing face-to-face, is we'll start out, like if I had 1 to 5, I would probably start out with 3 proctors helping set up students and like rotating through. As we get better, or as the test is winding down and I have 5 students and everyone's set up, I might go down to 1 proctor, and you can like go through the breakout rooms. So if you have 1 proctor to 5, they will just be continuously rotating through the breakout rooms. I think we're probably going to start with 2 to 5, maybe even more, until we kind of get all our systems working, and then slowly do this 1 to 5 is our goal.
Okay, Karen, thank you. Glenda, would you like to say any final words?
Be patient with yourself and practice a lot. It just takes practice.
Lots of practice.
Lots of practice, and just lots of practice, and just working through it, and just keep moving forward. That's what I tell everyone. We're just moving forward, and things, we're solving our issues, and a lot of training for us, because we're a large program. That's a big part of this, is we have to really train our staff well.
Okay, I just want to say that in terms of getting started, you may want to, and I think part of the message here is might be good to start one-on-one, because that when you're just doing it for the very first time, it's more manageable for both the proctor and the student. The remote control, you saw that in the video, where it does take a little bit of doing on the student's part. They have to be able to find that remote control on their device. But the easiest one of all is this approach 4, which is one-to-one oral responses. And that's where the proctor's has a Windows 10 PC, so you would have to make sure your proctor has that. But then the student can have such a lot of variety of devices, and the student will then see the test on their device, and just as they can navigate through, go question to question, and they just say, number 1, I think it's B, number 2, C, number 3, 4, D. So that's as simple as it can get, and that is a fallback, or maybe a good way to start to make it simple.
Yes, thank you, Linda and Jesse and Glenda and Karen so much, and Laurel for being here on support the CASAS team. This has been great. If you have any questions, this has been very informative. I think it's great to see the video, which you can watch again, and then Jesse showing us the steps to get a remote session registered, a computer registered. So thank you all very, very much. Oh, I forgot to mention, be sure to join the assessments community of practice, because anything that you have that you want to share in the community of practice or as the CASAS folder, we'll share things there. New information, if you come up with a great standard operating procedure, you have some great ideas, or if you have a question, post it in the community of practice, and then your peers can see the question and hopefully answer. You join the community of practice. It's in the PD portal. You go across your top bar, it says Connect Communities. You'll go to all communities and look for, it's called Assessments in Texas. It's in the PD portal, and it's under Connect Communities. If you have questions, email me about that.